Today I'm going to introduce Commander Endacott. After graduating from the United States Naval Academy with a degree in aerospace engineering, newly commissioned Ensign Endacott became a naval aviator, flying the A-4 Skyhawk, A-7 Corsair, F-5 Tiger, F-18 Hornet. I put them in really big letters so that I could see it without my glasses, and I still can't see it. H-3 Sea King helicopter, and several other aircraft. Over the course of his career, he served as a weapons test pilot, a carrier task force strike operations officer, an air wing strike leader, an instructor and tactics department head for the Naval Strike Warfare Center, NSWC, in Fallon, and commanding officer of a strike fighter FA-18 squadron. Recognized for his expertise and leadership, Commander Endacott was highly decorated. Following his retirement from the U.S. Navy, Commander Endacott built a successful career as a test and training consultant, contributing to several high-impact civilian and military projects. His expertise has supported numerous instructional and analytical projects across the country. As an engaged member of the Fallon community, Mr. Endacott, Commander Endacott, serves as the emergency manager for the city of Fallon, is an active member of the Fallon Rotary Club, and acts as the charter representative for Boy Scout Troop 1776. He has been married for 38 years to Commander Dana D. Endacott, USN retired, a former U.S. Navy C-130 Hercules pilot. They have two children, Ariel and Eric, who attended Churchill County Public Schools in Fallon. Please welcome Commander Endacott.
Okay. Anyway, thank you for having me tonight. I enjoyed being your guest speaker here tonight. This is an awesome museum. Welcome to the Churchill County Fallon Museum. Exits are that way, and restrooms are around the corner. You probably know where all those things are. So without any further ado, I'm going to go through a little bit of stuff about aviation, and it's keeping with the thing. So I've got a lot of stuff to show you tonight, and I'm going to kind of focus it a little bit on my background, which is aerospace engineering and then kind of jets. Okay, but I'm going to dabble into other areas as we go along. So without further ado, I found this great video, and it's in the Smithsonian Institute back in Washington, D.C., and you can watch it in IMAX. But I've got a little snippet of it here because it goes right to what I wanted to talk about tonight. So.
On the windswept dunes of Kitty Hawk, fewer than 100 years ago, we first lifted into the sky. Hold a plane in the sky. How do pilots like Sean Tucker and Patty Wagstaff train themselves to withstand G-forces that would make most of us black out?
That last jet was your F-18, and that's kind of my background. You see a lot of those flying around here in Fallon. It's been a real warhorse for the Navy. I'm not going to go too much into this because I was just introduced and said all that. My squadron was the adversaries out here. We're the bad guys. So if you ever watch Top Gun 1 and 2 with the the bad guy airplanes, that's what we represent. And they actually made it part of Aviation Week in Space Technology, because what they did is they took an F-18 and painted it up like a MiG. And so, just to kind of give the pilots a real, heart attack when you show up with them. I do have an air commercial transportation pilot's license, but I've never been an airline pilot, but I ride on a lot of them. So I can talk about that a bit. I was a consultant, and I'm a Boy Scout guy. Okay, but more importantly, I'm a pilot. And this is what we all really think that we are, you know? And tonight, you're gonna have to kind of roll with that, okay? So, there we go. But I'm humble enough to know that this is how everybody else really sees this. You get a bit of a twofer tonight because, as was mentioned earlier, I am married to another Navy pilot, retired Commander Dana Endacott, and she is here. Wave your hands. There you go, over there. Because if you want to know how to fly an airplane, what it's like to fly an airplane that's bigger than your house, and be one of the first women in the all-pilot boys club in the Navy, she's you wanted to talk to. You can talk to her after I'm done. But anyway, she's got a lot of experiences, just as much as I do with airplanes. All right, so aircraft. Aircraft is assigned to anything that pretty much flies in the air. And if you look at all these different kinds that they have there, they all have different purposes, which is why they all look different. You know, some have military applications, some have search and rescue. Maybe that's spray up there in the corner, I'm not sure. But anyway, maybe an advertisement and towing things. So you have a lot of different things you can do with aircraft, but there's some basic principles about what make them fly, and that's what we're going to talk to tonight. Talk about the aerodynamics, a little bit about the structures and about what the flight controls are like, and then we're just so once you kind of get those down, you can kind of see, oh yeah, now I kind of see why that airplane's built that way. So we're going to actually do a little bit of school tonight. So we do have prizes. If you answer some of the questions that you have before we get to the final exam at the end of the night, you will win a mighty Churchill County flyer. All right? And these are on sale in your bookstore right up front. Yep. So if you get it correct, you will get one of these. And they are very we actually have a couple of commemorative ones. Dana and I went to Kitty Hawk in North Carolina last year, and we actually went to the home of aviation, or the birth of aviation, which is where the Wright brothers flew their first fixed man-carrying airplane at Kitty Hawk. So we actually took these planes with us there, and we had to do, since I'm a test pilot background guy, we had to actually do a test flight. Okay, and this is the actual spot where the Wright brothers took off with their airplane. And that's me on the left, the test pilot, and Vanna Wright on the right. And we actually did fly the airplane. It did not go as far as the Wright brothers did, but anyway, we got there. Okay, so that's a little bit about us, except for I'll say that we have lived in Churchill County for a long time here. We were both stationed here in the Navy, and it's been over 30 years since I retired and stayed in the Navy here, or worked with the Navy and just stayed in Fallon, and I think in about 2 more decades I will be a local resident here. Maybe. Okay, so here's basic things about what make aircraft fly. You got 4 forces you're always trying to balance. And it's kind of like a sailboat, only it's in the sky. You're always going to have drag, because life's a drag. It always, and so, you know, you got wind blowing against you if you're trying to go forward. What makes you go forward is the thrust. And you need something to push you forward, to put wind over the wings and do some lift. And we're going to talk mostly about lift and thrust today. And weight's pretty straightforward. I brought a demonstration for weight. Paul, would you do a gravity check, please?
Of course. I'm used to doing this. It's supposed to be an apple.
Okay, so that wraps up that portion of our presentation tonight. Okay, let's talk about lift. Lift comes from wings, and even if it's a rotor blade airplane like a helicopter, those are rotating wings. So that's how we're gonna go fly, is we're gonna have wings. Now, wings have distinctive shapes depending on what you want the airplane to do and how fast it's gonna fly and how big is it gonna be. But they basically come down to what's the shape, how fast the wind is going over it, and then what is the viscosity, or is it real thick air like down at the ground, or is it really thin air like way up in the upper atmosphere? And you design, in the past, we would design one wing shape for one kind of airplane to do one kind of mission. And if you look at an airline, like a go and fly on Southwest, that's what you have. One wing on all those airplanes, and they're all kind of the same. They have some other things that augment them to help them fly, but it's the same kind of wing. The military's gotten a little farther down the road on that, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So, sorry, there's math. I figured I'd lose some observers, or some audience in this, but basically, here's the thing. You can define, we have figured out how, people have figured out how to define how much lift you're gonna get out of a wing, by how much air is going over it, by what is the inclination to the wind that's going over it, what's the thickness of the wind, and it's all basically derivatives of F equals ma, force equals mass times acceleration. Who came up with that?
Newton.
Newton. Who is that? Daryl. Daryl, you win the highly coveted Churchill County Flyer. There you go. It's a derivative of Newton's third law. And because there's math on it, and I'm not going to make you take a math quiz, but because there's math, we can model it with computers. And so that helps in the design. And nowadays, computers actually change the shape of the airplane as the pilot flies. The pilot doesn't literally do anything with a stick anymore. He tells the computer which way he wants to go, and the computer kind of figures out what it needs to do. It was pretty spooky when I got started. It took me a while to become a believer. So, but there's math. Okay, so now we got an airplane. We know what the forces are. That's the big wing thing. That's kind of another wing. It's called the tail. But anyway, they all have little extra moving parts that change the shapes of the wing and the lift on the wing, and therefore the lift on the wing. So if you want to fly real slow, there's these things called flaps in the back of the main wing, and you'll see this. Look out there, look out the window of an airplane when as it's starting to take off. And those things will droop down and change the wing and make it really curvy. Okay, why? Because when you're taking off and landing, you gotta be slow, and you gotta bite into a great big hunk of air, and you wanna force it downward, and that gives you lift at a slow speed. You start going fast, those little puppies come up, and now you got kind of a thin wing, okay? You take the same kind of idea and you put them on the wingtips, and what that does is if the pilot wants to roll or turn, one aileron will go up and the other one will go down, and it basically takes the plane and allows it to roll this way. Same thing with the rudder, makes the plane yaw left and right, and then you change the lift on the tail, the horizontal stabilizer, and that actually defines whether your plane's nose is going to go up and down. It actually creates negative lift if you want to go up. So that's a little backwards, but that's in the back. So that's your basic aviation components of an average airplane. And we'll see little demonstrations of that in some videos a little bit later on here. So everybody got lift, right? Okay, beat it to death. Here we go. How do you go fast? How do you go? So what they started all out with were propellers. And who invented this one? I'm sorry. Oh, okay, raise your hand. Yeah, who? Da Vinci. You have another winner of the mighty Churchill County Flyer. That's from Leonardo da Vinci, came up with the first, what we think is kind of a propeller. At least he wrote it down. All right, we used to sell these here at the Churchill County Museum. Anybody ever play with these as a kid? Yeah, you just rotate them and off they go. When the Wright brothers were building the Wright Flyer, they were trying to figure out how to make it go forward, and they had one of these toys. And they said, well, let's just take one of those, make it bigger, and put a motor to it, and that's how we're going to go forward. And that's what they did. They kind of invented using the first propeller on a manned airplane. Now they're great big honking things with 6 blades. They got all sorts of carbon fiber in them. They change in pitch to take bigger pieces of air, little pieces of air. And so now they're very complicated, and you see that they're flying still today. So from the Wright brothers' first airplane to now, something you will probably ride in, you will see propellers, because it was a good idea. And it manages moving air pretty good, which is what you want to do if you want thrust. You got to move a lot of air, and you want to move it from still to very, very fast. That's how you go forward. So speaking of going very, very fast, so now this is a jet engine and how a jet engine works. All right, and you've kind of seen them hanging on airplanes and in movies, but it's an internal combustion engine, just like your car before it went electric. And it takes air from the outside and compresses it by making it go down, down through this big long tube. It makes it very, very compressed. You throw some fuel in it, you light it off. It gets very, very hot. It expands, creates a huge amount of pressure, and it gets shot out the back like a fire hose. If you want to really go fast or throw a lot of thrust, you throw a little extra fuel in the back and light that off too as well, and then it goes through a nozzle. What do you think you call that back part in there? Anybody know? Afterburner. Afterburner, who said that? There we go, another winner of the mighty Churchill County Flyer. Okay, that joke's gonna get pretty old here soon, so anyway. But I still got a few left, so don't stop answering questions. All right, so there you go. And speaking of the nozzle in the back, we call these, I'm gonna teach you some pilot lingo here. We call these turkey feathers. And what that is it's actually a computer-controlled little nozzle in the back. As that supersonic air comes flying out the back, it can kind of squeeze it and get a little bit more thrust out of it. You ever take a garden hose, put your thumb on the end of it, and then it goes farther and faster? Yeah, this is the thumb on the garden hose. Only the garden hose is a jet exhaust. And you'll see some of those in action a little later on. And if you, in certain circumstances, you can take that propeller and you can take that jet engine and combine them together and make a thing called a turboprop. You basically put a propeller on the front of a jet engine. And there's certain flight regimes where that is the most efficient way to produce thrust. Okay, so let's go back and talk about our buddies Orville and Wilbur and Kitty Hawk and how they built their airplane, and see how many of these pieces of technology these guys actually kind of came up with. Because I did kind of advertise at this. We're going to kind of start with the Wright brother guys, and then where are we with aviation now and where we're going to go maybe we think in the future. But if you can see here, they actually thought of everything. Here's that elevator thing in the front that handles the up and down part. Here's the wing to give you the lift. Here's the rudder to keep that horizontal nose going straight. There's their propeller, and they have an engine in there to keep that going. And they pretty much got everything handled, as you can see there, that's labeled. The only thing that's not really obvious in today's kind of flight is this little cradle that Orville or Wilbur or whoever that is today is lying in. They didn't know they didn't think of ailerons. So they ran cables out to the end of the wings, and if you moved left and right, the cables would twist the wing, and twisting the wing would actually change the way it flew, and it kind of would do a roll. So literally, they had to lay in this little thing and do the Macarena, while you're kind of trying to fly, which seemed like, I thought I was always busy with just a stick and a throttle, but these guys were, doing this. But hey, they didn't die, and they created an airplane. So I'm just glad the pilots don't have to deal with that anymore. But pretty close to what we're dealing with absolutely now. Same surfaces. Okay, so let's talk about what it takes, because this is the aerospace engineer in me. Let's talk about who you got to deal with and what you got to do to build an airplane or some kind of flying craft. Well, you got to pick out the mission, and then you say, okay, what is this going to be? Is it going to be a fighter? Is it going to be a transport? A private little airplane? Well, what do you do? But any design crew that gets together to design an airplane has to integrate a bunch of different disciplines, which is why whenever somebody talks to me about, because I just got asked this last week at the high school, if I become an aerospace engineer, what can I do? And I said, you can kind of do anything, because you got to know so many different disciplines to build a craft, and you have to understand them. So you got to talk to the structures guy. And the problem with the structures guy is he's going to want to build everything like an I-beam. He wants it to be the the strongest airplane that you ever get, and it's never gonna break, and you guys, we don't care about what you do, but then the aerodynamic guy comes in and goes, well, hey, I want it to be light, I want it to be fast, I want it to be pointy, you know, and it's gonna be really slick, you know, it's gonna be a great airplane. And then you bring in the guy who's a fuselage, he goes, well, I want it to be a 3-decker school bus, you know, with wings, so I can haul a lot of people, and that's what he wants. Then you get the power plant guy in charge, and he just wants everything to be the engine. You get the wing guy, and he wants the biggest wing you can get with all his flight control surfaces, so you can do just about anything you want to do. And then you get the Navy and the military guys involved, and they want to hang weapons, bombs, radars, everything else you can. And then now that's not enough because the missiles are really bad now, so you bring in the stealth guy, and he wants your airplane to look like this. So life's a compromise, and you have to understand all those disciplines and how there's maybe a little less strength and a little more wing and a little longer tail, and you know, so it's quite a process to design an airplane. So this is not a quiz, this is kind of a little bit of an airplane in action. All right, I got another airplane. What kind of airplane is this? Okay, somebody who said F-14 raise their hand. There's a guy. Right there. That's the F-14 Tomcat that was made famous in the first movie of Top Gun, back when Tom Cruise was just an ensign. And so we hadn't gotten to the computers being involved in flight yet, but we just started dabbling in it. And there was one computer in the airplane that affected whether the great big honking wing, and you'll see it, let me point it out to you. The wings move. They move way back along the side of the airplane, and they want it like that when they want to go real fast, because they don't need a lot of wing. And a lot of wing means a lot of drag. But sometimes you want to turn real fast in a dogfight or land, and the wings come out like this, and then now you're in the vulture mode, you know, or the buzzard mode. So so this just happens to be just a snippet of this airplane maneuvering around back when it was the cool airplane of the year. And you'll see how that one particular thing works. You'll also see a couple other things. You'll see a catapult shot, which is how planes, the jets and the Navy get off the aircraft carrier. They literally hook them up to a steam slingshot and throw them in the air. And how they land is a hook comes down in the back, and there's a cable, and you land and catch the cable, and the cable stops you. So you can build a lot more or you can make an airplane lighter, stronger, faster, carry more fuel, more bombs, because you don't have to worry about taking off, you don't have to worry about landing. The ship does that for you. You do have to have wheels. You have to have wheels in the bottom. Okay, so here's a little bit of everything from a Tomcat. That's the catapult shot. There's the burners. There's the missiles they want to hang on it. He's got the wings way out so he can make these tight turns. He's chasing a MiG right there. Sometimes you want those wings out there if you're just hanging out and you want to be efficient, very slow, and then you can go fast and then sweep them back in. So that's kind of the beginning of this whole, hey, let's let a computer control some of our surfaces for us. You got to put the hook down by yourself. There's that wire. You're going to catch the wire there, and there he is. And that's him with the wings kind of swept back. So, okay, we're getting cool airplanes now. Russians thought that was so cool, they put it in the flogger. They did the same thing. They said, hey, let's just do that, and they started building airplanes the same way. So what changed? What's changed in the last 50 years? Well, advanced lightweight materials like aluminum and titanium get used more, and then there's other stuff called carbon fiber. And carbon fiber is what we're making the skin out of, at least military airplanes, out of. And that's because it's very strong and it's very light. Carbon fiber. It's kind of like fiberglass, only way stronger. We were just talking to the base about this the other day, about hazards. If a plane does crash, you want to stay away from it, and you don't think, well, bombs are going to explode or whatever. No, it's really, if anything like that's going to happen, it's happened. It's that carbon fiber breaks up into a billion little tiny pieces, and it's sharp like fiberglass. So if you pick it up or try to handle it or step on it, you get a good chance you're going to cut yourself. It's like like breaking a glass with a whole bunch of broken glass everywhere. So just so you know, carbon fiber is your friend if it's together, and it's not if you see it on the ground. Those digital flight controls I've been slamming talking about, the computers now tell the plane what to do. Computerized engines make them really efficient now and high-powered. And then all sorts of advances in navigation and sensors and things like that. So that's what's kind of new. With those, we can get airplanes up way up high and way, way fast. This is, oh, should I do another airplane? Airplane recognition? Whose is this?
F-16.
Nope. Nope. Did you say it, Ann? What did you say, Ann?
It's a 15.
F-15. She did. She's a winner. Ann's a winner. Okay. But it's an Air Force airplane, so you don't get one. It's just, yeah. Not too bad. Okay, let's look at these things. This is supersonic plasma jet fuel coming out the back of this thing at high altitude. And so the way you can tell it is the way it changes two things. One, it changes color, and the second thing is these things are called Mach discs. In other words, that jet exhaust is coming out so fast that it's faster than the speed of sound. It hits the air that's around it, and it actually reflects the shock waves. You know what you heard a sonic boom? That's a shock wave. That's actually standing shock waves coming out of the back of that jet. So that just shows the speed at which the exhaust is coming out of these airplanes, because he's probably got some big honking engines, and he's got some turkey feathers. So he's off and running, he's way up high. The other thing about flying high and supersonic is the way the wind, the air goes over the wing changes as well. So now you need a wing that's almost just a flat board. You want something that's just as thin and flat as you possibly can get it, and you're just going to create a shock wave on it. And you're going to use the shock wave for lift. And that's they actually have modeled this, and they know how the shock wave starts. As you're slower, it starts forward on the wing, and then gets bigger, and you get one on the bottom, and it gets bigger and bigger. When you got up over the Mach, you've actually got the shock wave at the front of the wing and at the tail end. It's pretty awesome to see. So, but that's what you're dealing with, not lift like we had with the earlier slides. This is shock wave management. And you can tell an airplane is going supersonic, particularly down in the south where the air is humid, because you get a thing called, you get vapes. We call them vapors. That is a supersonic shock wave on an airplane going supersonic near the deck. And what happens is, as the air goes through, and it's humid air, as it goes through the shock wave, it actually shocks the humidity out of the air into a vapor form. And as you can see here, it follows you everywhere. Everywhere the shock is, that's where the vape is. And so there you go. Now you know another term, vapes. So the reason I put this in here is to show, now we're getting an airplane that has a computer-controlled system in it, flight controls, and you can see, just kind of, you have to watch pretty fast, but all the huge deflections this airplane can make and morph itself into, while it's just sitting here on the deck, they're just testing the flight controls. But right now, this would be a good plane to be supersonic, because the wings are all real skinny, and the tail elevators are all nice and lined with where you want to go. This plane could be flying supersonic because it's really slicked up. But it's going through its pre-flight checks, and so this plane captain in front here is, as the pilot moves the controls around, he's just making sure they're going the right direction, which is a good thing to know before you go fly. So that's the plane captain's job. And what I'd like you to watch here is just how big some of these surfaces are on this little, actually relatively small airplane as it gets ready to go flying. You want to check that it'll do the entire regime. Oh, there it is. Great big honking tail. Ailerons, flaps are moving. Rudders are moving. So we make sure all those great big, and then as it quit, everything was already kind of drooped in what's known as the takeoff mode. And what was kind of cool about this airplane, or still today, is before you go flying, you go, okay, trim the airplane for takeoff. And you literally push a button, and all the flaps and tail and everything go to where you want it to be. And that's all you got to do is push a button and say, I want to go fly now. Okay. So in summary on all that stuff, we're getting pretty long into this thing. We're almost done. You put together a power plant and aerodynamics that has flight controls and a lot of large flight controls and a computer system to manage them. And you do the same for your engine, and you get a jet that will do something like this. And this is just another visual demonstration. I do have a warning and disclaimer for you first. All right, do not go steal an F-18 and go do this yourself. I am a professional. You can see me here, and I just kind of went out to the line here in Fallon and kind of borrowed that airplane, which is left over from a movie, okay? So don't do that. So then I got the helmet, and then I went flying. This is all in Churchill County, by the way. Not Augusta. $40-mile desert just north of here. That's the Stillwaters. Turkey feathers. I got snuck toward an aircraft carrier. Got a catapult shot. Bates. And then land back on the carrier. Anyway, quite a lot of maneuverability, speed, and flexibility where you land and what they've come up with on airplanes today. So, and it's all that same group of guys working those same issues over and over and over again and trying to put in whatever the latest technology is. So, we're wrapping this thing up with what's next. This was in the what next column. It's now out here now. This is the F-35 Lightning. It's our newest strike fighter, and strike fighter means you're going to strike and attack the people on the ground, and fighter means you're going to shoot them in the air. So it does both roles, just like the F-18. Planes have almost kind of reached the kinetic limit of what they can do now. I mean, this plane doesn't go much faster than the F-18. It doesn't turn much tighter than the F-18. So the biggest thing this thing does is they've integrated a fair amount of stealth into it. So it's got a lot of that carbon fiber coating, and it's shaped such that it doesn't want to reflect radars back to where they came from. And that's kind of stealth technology from back around the Gulf War era, but it works pretty good. So what we've decided to do with this one is make it more survivable, and then put in some really smart radars and other sensors in it. Matter of fact, the pilot has $1 million helmet. And around anybody got one of those cars that you can, as you back out, you can see all the way around you because it's got little cameras all over it. Airplane has little cameras all over. And it projects it into the helmet of the pilot. So you can actually look down, he can look down through his feet and see his wingman flying underneath him. Or he can look out where the wing is and see through the wing in his visor. So that's the kind of stuff they're putting in now to make them way more efficient and way more lethal. So those kinds of things. So what are the airlines thinking? Well, they're always thinking, how do we make more money and how do we save the Earth? I mean, that's kind of the two big things. This is one of the ways right here where they're looking at a composite of a flying fuselage as a wing, and then you could put littler wings on here and then put on some really big turbofan engines for efficiency. And so now it's how can I get from point A to point B with the least amount of fuel, carbon footprint, blah, blah, blah. So they're thinking about things like this. I think the only downside is window seats are going to go way up in this airplane.
They need 2 more floors.
Yeah, there you go. And I don't know if these are skylights or what those are, but maybe your window's up straight up on you. And that's one idea that's out. There's lots of ideas, but that's another one. Some people don't want to, not too worried about being the most efficient on gas or whatever, although it's pretty good efficient on gas, but they want to get there fast. So there's some supersonic models. remember the different kind of guys that are all fighting over what's the airplane going to look like? You know, the aerodynamic guy won this one, you know, and the fuselage guy won that last airplane argument. So there you go. But if you want to get to Chicago to Melbourne, you know, Australia in 4 hours, this is your airplane. So, and some people are going to want to do that. They actually have battery-powered airplanes they're looking at now for small commuters and personal airplanes now. And this is one of the examples that's on the board for a commuter airplane. And this is my favorite. This is the Jetson model. I've been waiting for my flying car for a long time. And I'm hoping I can someday get one of these and put it in my backyard. So they're looking at a whole array of things. I'll wrap it up with, if you're talking to kids, grandkids, whatever, there are lots of jobs in the aviation business. And I have 3 of these that show all of them. This kind of starts with pilots, and then this kind of gets into everybody that keeps the airplanes flying and keeps them repaired. And then all the way down to, hey, you know, if you want to be working a counter, you want to load bags, and you want to direct airplanes out there on the line with those flashy wands, you know, well, we need a lot of people. Aviation is a big, big business, and there's lots of room in it. So I tell guys, particularly the Boy Scouts, when I do this, is, you know, if you're interested in kind of being, if you don't want to be the pilot because you get sick if you fly upside down, look at all these other jobs that are out there. Well, in summary, it's been a real nice pleasure for me to get a chance to brag about this kind of profession here and what they do, and hopefully you learned a little something and got a few laughs and a few airplanes out of it. So, can I answer any questions? Yes.
You mentioned turbofan, and then you said turboprop.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Okay, that's a great question. A turbofan is it's a jet engine, and then they actually put another set of rotors in there that compresses the air, but it's all inside the big long tube, okay? And it's called bypass air. It just goes around the jet engine part and still adds to the forward thrust of the airplane. It's still turned by the turbine blades in the back, which are the hot gases are making them spin like a windmill. And airlines, like all the stuff that Boeing's flying when you go fly Southwest, those are turbofan engines. Those great big honking round engines are turbofan because there's a fan in there. And it looks like a fan if you look down the tube. A turboprop is you take a turbofan or maybe just a turbojet and run a crankshaft up forward and attach a propeller onto it with a bunch of big blades that are outside the body of where the engine is. So, and I actually have a slide for that. It's buried in the Boy Scout section. But I said I kind of went enough's enough. I'm just going to talk about these 3 here. But yeah, turbofan is another. It's kind of a modification to make a jet engine more efficient. Cool, smart question. No, you don't get an airplane.
No prize.
Steve, there was the picture you were talking about was the vapes. It was the cone coming from about the back third of the aircraft.
Right.
It looks like, to the uninitiated, it looks like that would cause some kind of drag. Does it?
It does.
Any drag at all?
Oh yeah, Mach drag is horrific sometimes. And so if you look at a drag chart on an airplane as it's getting closer and closer to Mach, it actually goes, here's the drag, my right hand's the drag as you're getting faster. And then actually, once you pass a certain point, the drag actually gets less as you get past the Mach shock. Most of it's behind you and it doesn't actually drag. I'm not actually know why that is, but anybody know what the Blackbird is, the SR-71? It's been a spy plane. You can now, used to be super secret, you know, now you can see them in airplane parks. But those things, it's actually backwards. You know, they get so efficient the faster they go. If they get low on fuel, they go faster to try to get to the destination. And actually, they get less drag the faster they go, which sounds like if you like the car, if you're running out of gas, you don't go, well, let's step on it. You know? But they literally do that. Oh, run out of gas. You know, now they're doing Mach 4. You know, we're going to turn over Kansas. You know, so yeah, that's a good question.
What does it feel like when you break Mach?
You know, if you go watch the movie, The Right Stuff, and the clouds all change color and everything, and the music gets really loud, no, it's nothing like that at all. It's a number. In these F-18s, it just knows, and it's...
So you as a pilot, you don't really notice it?
Got to look at the speedometer, you know? You really don't notice it. Now, back in the older days, you know, the Chuck Yeager stuff, the Right Stuff, when they were having trouble figuring out how to do this, yeah, they got into some pretty strong buffet as that airplane, the Bell, whatever, as they were trying to get it to Mach. Yeah, it was, yeah, they had control issues because the aerodynamics on the wing, as I talked about earlier, change. What do you mean when the air's not doing the same thing on the wing anymore? It's now kind of a standing shock wave. And they had a little trouble figuring that out, but they did. And so now the computer knows about that. And he just, yeah. I mean, I've gone through, matter of fact, one reason you hear the boom booms out here from the jets on the base occasionally, it's because, and I used to remember this as an adversary trainer, it's because those kids, they see the bad guy, me, you know, oh no, Endo's gonna shoot me, you know, and they just stump the nose and they go to full afterburner and they're back looking behind them and they just whoop, and they just go right through the number. They go right through Mach, and you know, and we, the instructors in the back, look for that. We'll say, okay, good enough. You got away, stop. you're heading to Austin, you know. And yeah, that to me, when I was flying out here, that's how I saw most guys break the sound barrier when they kind of weren't supposed to, is because they just get so excited, and it's just a number on a dial. So, yes, in the back.
Is there going to come a time when a pilot, you don't really need a pilot?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. Well, they're already doing that now. There's already have drones. Drones are out flying around right now, and there's certain jobs that drones have, which are great for drones. The Predator drone, I worked a lot with those folks for a while. We'd go out and fly for 18 hours, and they'd have this really nice big TV camera, and they'd just sit there and watch this terrorist house for day in and day out, waiting for the guy to come home or something, you know? I mean, I don't want that job, sitting like that. And the pilots would just change out. Okay, I've done my 4 hours, you know, somebody else go fly this thing. And so doing very dull, they say drones are good for dull, dirty, and dangerous. Like the drone can fly through the radioactive cloud, you know, not a pilot, you know. So that would be the dangerous. Dull would be watching the house. And dangerous would also be, that's dirty going through the atomic stuff. And then dangerous would be, well, maybe we'll send a drone to see if the bad guys are there. Oh, it didn't come back. They might be there. They've got drones now that are as big as these, and actually bigger than these Southwest airliner airplanes that are flying. And they'll go up to 60, 70,000 feet and fly for 2 days. And so those are great drone jobs. They're starting to look at fighter airplanes to do, you know, maybe let's put some, put some AI in that, or maybe have somebody fly it from somewhere else if you can handle the delay and the satellites and all that stuff. But maybe a drone doesn't care if it's pulling 20 Gs or 15 Gs. Where a pilot, you get about 9, and then the guy just, you know, you can't do it very long. 9 Gs, 9 times G is 1 gravity. So if I weighed 200 pounds, you know, right here, that's what I would weigh now. But, you know, it's 9 times that, you know, so 1,800 pounds, that's, my ankles would break, you know, I mean, and what the big thing that happens is, you know, people hurt their backs, they hurt their necks, and the blood goes out of your head. And that's the biggest thing that happens is they just black out. And I think that was in the latest Top Gun movie, the one guy that, you know, that pulled too hard and passed out, and I don't know, anyway, he supposedly got a thing called G-lock. G-lock stands for G, loss of consciousness. And that has happened. We lost an F-18 pilot to that, a Blue Angel pilot to that, not too long ago. Just pulled too hard to catch up with the rest of the team, and you could just tell he went to sleep. Yeah, so. Anywho, brighter. Do I have a better, brighter question? I mean, a question that's happier? Yeah, Daryl.
Do the computers now control landing on the carriers to maximize the wire capture?
Not so much the wire capture, but just sometimes the weather is just so bad. Maybe yeah, you can couple up, as they say, where you can connect to a computer on the ship that will actually talk to your airplane and fly it into the wires. Yeah. They still make you do it manually, because they say you're going to do it manually every single time, because that may not work. And we want you to be ready to do that. We'll trust the computer when it's time, but we want you to make a manual landing. So I don't think I've ever really done, at 500 landings, I never did that. You had a question?
Yeah, I wonder, like all these sophisticated jets and stuff, like do the Russians and the Chinese, do they have planes that can give us a hard time, like, or are we pretty well ahead?
No, they're about with us.
Oh, so that's scary.
That is scary. Yeah. A lot of it's because they've stolen a lot of stuff.
Oh, they took it, but they
Yeah.
got it though.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we probably got a few tricks up their sleeve they hadn't thought of, but I mean, speed, altitude stuff, they're pretty much called, you know, good par adversaries, you know.
So don't underestimate them.
Don't underestimate them, right. So,
How do you account for the roll of the ship and things like that, the movement of the ship?
if you're doing it manually, you just, and I see it, sometimes the ship is doing the Macarena. I mean, you're coming in and it's kind of doing one of these things, and you just have to mentally kind of null out the sideways stuff, but the carrier is pretty good at trying to keep that straight. It's the heave up and down that gets a little interesting, because your landing area, land here, no land here, no land here, no land here. And they have a lighting system called the Fresnel lens, and it shines a beam of light up at you, and you're trying to keep that beam of light in the same spot. And they actually have gyros and hydraulics on that, to where even if the ship's doing goofy stuff, it kind of stays constant and compensates for that. So they kind of basically say, land on the ship, but don't look at it. You know, you're trying to look at that light and keep it right there in the middle where it's supposed to be, and somewhere you just kind of null out the left and right stuff, and then next thing you know, you either landed or you haven't. And the good news about not landing today compared to when this first started was the deck is canted sideways. The ship's going this way, but the deck is canted kind of sideways. And if you land and that hook doesn't catch the wire, you go to full power and you just take right back off again. And you come out and try it again, you know? And usually it's your fault for doing that, but a lot of times the weather's just so bad or something else is going on, they go, that's all right, you know, just come around again, it's all right. So it's called a bolter. It's another term of a bolter if you don't get aboard. Okay, it's been 55 minutes. Have I sung for my supper? Thank you.